Part 1. A town that trusted 2MUCH. Pine Ridge was the kind of place people moved to when they wanted life to slow down. A place with only one main road, one grocery store, one gas station, and a school so small that teachers remembered every child's birthday. A place where windows were left open at night, where parents didn't worry about letting their children walk home alone, and where people still waved at strangers because strangers were rare. It was quiet, predictable, safe. Or so everyone believed. In 2008, Pine Ridge held just under 8,000 residents. Most of them had lived there for decades, inheriting houses, local traditions, and friendships from their parents and grandparents. The town sat at the foot of 3 wooded hills, behind which thick forests stretched for miles. Hiking trails wound through the pines like veins, leading to old hunting cabins, abandoned mining shafts, and dried riverbeds long forgotten by the younger generation. The woods were not considered dangerous, just wild. Kids built forts there, teens held bonfire parties deep among the trees. Dog walkers made daily loops through the forest paths without fear. Everyone in Pine Ridge trusted the woods, but the woods, as it turned out, were watching them back. The girl who couldn't disappear, 13-year-old Lisa Marshall, was the last person anyone would expect to vanish. She was reliable, predictable, soft-spoken, and responsible to a fault. Her teachers described her as the kid who always did what she was told. Her friends said she was sweet. Her parents said she was cautious. Lisa didn't take risks. She wasn't the kind of girl who wandered off, skipped school, or ran away. Everything about her was steady and deliberate. On October 14th, she left school as she always did, wearing her green jacket, her hair tied in a tight ponytail, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Her house was an 8-minute walk away. She had walked that trail since the 3rd grade. It should have been impossible for her to vanish in such a small town, on such a familiar path, in broad daylight, but she did. The trail that lied 2 hours after school ended. Lisa's mother called the school. She expected to hear that Lisa had stayed late for tutoring. Instead, she heard she left at 3:02. Panic splintered through her. Then came the calls, to neighbors, to friends, to the police. By 6 p.m., officers were sweeping the trail. By 8 p.m., half the town joined in. At 9:13 p.m., a volunteer found Lisa's backpack standing upright beside a tree, not dropped, not torn, not thrown in a struggle, placed it gently, intentionally. As if someone wanted it to be found. Inside were her notebooks, her house keys, her pencil case, and half of a sandwich she hadn't finished at lunch. Her phone was missing. That detail struck investigators immediately. She never went anywhere without her phone, but what disturbed them more was the location. The tree where the backpack sat was not close to a hiding spot, or a road, or even a thick cluster of bushes. It was out in the open. A place no kidnapper would choose, unless the kidnapper wasn't thinking like an adult. The first look at the suspect. The first witness statement came from a boy Lisa's age, Bennett Holloway. A quiet, almost unnervingly silent 14-year-old who was in her math class. He told officers he'd seen nothing unusual. When detectives asked him to describe Lisa's walk home, he recited the details perfectly. She leaves at 3:02. She takes the East Trail. She walks alone. She doesn't stop for anyone. It was odd. Most kids weren't that observant, but Bennett had always been different. His teachers said he rarely spoke unless called on. His classmates said he kept to himself. He never caused trouble. He never joined after-school activities. He blended in so well that people sometimes forgot he was there, but he always seemed too aware. One teacher had said, half-jokingly, "Bennett doesn't talk much, but he sees everything." Detectives didn't know yet how true that was. A subtle red flag when police interviewed children after the disappearance. Most of them were frantic, worried about their friend, scared to walk home, but Bennett was calm, calmer than any other teenager, too calm. When asked if he heard anything unusual, he responded, "No. I go straight home." When asked if he ever talked to Lisa, he said, "She doesn't notice me." It was a strange phrasing, not past tense, but present. As if he resented it. As if it mattered. Detectives noted it, parents dismissed it, teachers overlooked it, but in hindsight, that sentence would define the entire investigation. She doesn't notice me. Not, I don't know her well. Not, we're not friends. It was personal. A wound. A motive. The search expands. By the second day, the search grid extended deep into Pine Ridge Forest. Officers marked trees with bright ribbons. Volunteers combed the ground for clothing, broken branches, drag marks, but found nothing. No footprints. No signs of struggle. No tire tracks. It was as if Lisa had been lifted out of the world. On the third day, the police chief requested helicopters. On the fourth, cadaver dogs were brought in, still nothing, until one dog caught a scent, faint but undeniable, near an old maintenance shed deep in the woods. The shed was unlocked. Inside, officers found food wrappers and footprints too small to be an adult's, but no Lisa. The trail continued another 60 yards into the forest, and ended behind the Holloway family's property, directly behind their house, directly behind Bennett's bedroom window. The town begins to whisper. Rumors spread fast in small towns. By the end of the week, people began murmuring, "Did you know that's the Holloway kid's trail? He walks home alone too. He's always been strange. My daughter says he stares at people. There's something off about that boy." But police can't work on whispers. They needed evidence, and on day 5, they got it. Entirely by accident, the journal that changed everything. An officer revisited the Holloway home to re-interview the parents. During the conversation, he noticed something odd. Bennett hovered in the doorway, watching, silent. His father told him to go finish homework. He walked away slowly, his expression blank. Something about his demeanor, about the flatness in his eyes, made the officer uneasy. He asked the parents for permission to look around the house, just to rule everything out. They agreed. The officer entered Bennett's room. It was too clean, too organized. Every item had its place, but a notebook corner stuck out from under the bed. Inside that notebook were names, schedules, children's routines, and a full page dedicated to Lisa Marshall, written weeks before she disappeared. At the bottom, "I picked her because she didn't see me." The officer stopped breathing for a moment. This was not a child's diary. This was a predator's notebook. What the room revealed. Police obtained a full search warrant within hours. What they found in Bennett's room and the basement would horrify even veteran officers. Behind an old wooden cabinet in the basement was a narrow door. It led to a tiny concealed space, a child-sized hideout Bennett had built himself. On the walls, Polaroids of schoolchildren, sketches of faceless figures, detailed maps of forest trails, newspaper articles about disappearances in other towns. In the floor, rope fibers, a broken flashlight, a girl's hair clip, and in a small metal box, Lisa's bracelet, a torn piece of her school shirt, handwritten notes titled "Practice" and "Plan." Still no body, still no confession, but the truth was becoming clear. This wasn't an impulsive act. It was premeditated, structured, practiced, refined. And the boy behind it had been preparing for much longer than anyone imagined. Part 2, The Boy Who Smiled at the Badge. The discovery of the notebook exploded through the investigation like a grenade. Veteran detectives who had assumed Lisa's disappearance was the work of a transient adult suddenly found themselves staring at a new reality. The suspect was 14. And he had planned this, but a notebook wasn't enough for an arrest, not yet. The police needed Bennett to talk. They brought him in for questioning, not in handcuffs, not under arrest, because legally he was still a minor and only providing information. But the moment he sat down in the interrogation room, the atmosphere changed. Most kids broke down within minutes under the fluorescent lights and the pressure of adult authority. But Bennett, he sat straight, calm, hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed forward, not defiant, not frightened, just studying. As if the detectives were the ones being observed. The first question, Detective Rowan, a 20-year veteran, was the first to speak. "Bennett, do you know why you're here?" A normal child might cry, deny, say, "I didn't do anything." Instead, Bennett shrugged, a small, almost bored lift of his shoulders. "You think I took her?" His tone wasn't defensive, it was stating a fact. Detective Rowan exchanged a glance with his partner. "Did you?" he asked. Bennett tilted his head, as if considering the question not morally, but intellectually. Then he said something that made the air in the room go still. "Does it matter what I say?" It was not the language of a scared child. It was the language of someone who understood the game. The smile. Detective Rowan tried a different approach. "Your parents are worried." This would have broken most teenagers. Mention a parent, and the facade cracks, but Bennett's lips twitched into something between a smirk and a smile. He said, "My parents don't see anything." Rowan asked, "What do you mean?" Bennett answered, "They never look where it matters." Detective Rowan had interrogated everyone from petty thieves to murderers, but this was the first time he felt genuine unease talking to a child. It wasn't what Bennett said. It was how he said it. Flat. Emotionless. As if he had rehearsed it. The journal confrontation. Detectives placed Bennett's journal on the table. His eyes flicked down, and for the first time, his face changed, not with fear, with pride. As if seeing his work displayed gave him a sense of satisfaction. Detective Rowan opened to the page about Lisa. I picked her because she didn't see me, he read aloud. What does that mean? Bennett leaned forward, rested his elbows on the table. She doesn't see people like me. People like you. Rowan pressed. Quiet ones. Invisible ones. The ones nobody chooses. It was a strange, cryptic explanation, but deeply revealing. Lisa hadn't chosen him for friendship. She hadn't even acknowledged him, and that, for Bennett, was enough to justify everything he had done. The trail of logic. Detective Rowan tried to break the boy's cold logic with emotion. Bennett, her parents are terrified. They need to know she's okay. She's not okay, Bennett replied instantly, without hesitation. Rowan swallowed. Is she alive? Silence. A long, heavy silence. Bennett tapped the table softly with one finger, rhythmic, controlled, then stopped. He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He said, I made her disappear. The same words he would repeat over and over in the weeks to come. Not a confession, but not a denial. A statement of power. The mother's breakdown. While Bennett was being questioned, Lisa's mother arrived at the station. She demanded to see him. When police refused, she collapsed in the lobby, screaming, he knows where she is. He knows. Why won't he tell us? Bennett heard her from down the hall. He didn't show concern. He didn't flinch, but he smiled. Detectives later wrote, that was the moment we realized we were not dealing with a scared child. We were dealing with something else entirely. The hidden room gets darker. While the interrogation continued, crime scene analysts finished processing the hidden basement room in the Holloway house. New discoveries emerged. 1. A wall calendar with names written on specific dates. Lisa's name was written on October 14. Another name, Emily, was written 6 months earlier. Another, Jacob, a year before that. Both Emily and Jacob had been missing from neighboring towns. At the time, police had blamed runaways or accidents, but now, the correlation was chilling. Point 2. A collection of locks of hair. DNA testing later confirmed that one lock belonged to Lisa. Point 2. Others were never identified. Point 3. Crude wooden figurines, each faceless, each bound by carved ropes. There were 3 figurines. Point 3. Missing children. Point 4. A notebook hidden inside a cereal box. This one contained instruction sketches, practice attempts, detailed rules like, pick the ones who walk alone. Never take 2 from the same place. Hide them where the trees twist. The language was not childish. It was clinical, obsessively methodical. The psychological profile emerges while detectives interrogated Bennett. A child psychologist reviewed his writings. Her conclusion, Bennett displays a detachment from emotional consequence typically associated with early-stage psychopathy. He views people as objects, roles, or opportunities. She added, his age doesn't match the complexity of his planning. This is not sudden behavior, this is developed. She had one last note, he is proud of what he has done. The parents' shock when police finally confronted Bennett's parents. They were visibly shattered. His mother sobbed uncontrollably, insisting, my boy is gentle. He's shy. He wouldn't hurt a fly. His father countered defensively, he's quiet, but he's a good kid. Kids draw strange things. Neither parent believed the evidence. They refused to look at the figurines, refused to read the journal, refused to accept reality. When confronted with the hidden room, the father said, I thought he was just playing alone, he liked privacy. The investigators realized something critical. Bennett had no one watching him. No one questioning him. No one noticing the warning signs. His invisibility wasn't an accident. It was nurtured. The night at the precinct, after hours of questioning, detectives left Bennett alone in the room, hoping time would weaken him. A hidden camera recorded everything. For the first 30 minutes, he sat still. Then he began humming, softly, rhythmically. A slow, eerie tune. After a while, he whispered something. She walks in circles now. Detectives rewound the footage repeatedly, trying to decipher the meaning. What circles? Where? Was he revealing a location? Or was this part of a fantasy world he had built in his mind? The ambiguity made the case even more disturbing. The decision to hold him legally. Police couldn't arrest Bennett without stronger evidence or a confession, but they could hold him for 48 hours as a person of interest. During that time, investigators worked non-stop, mapping the forest, interviewing teachers, analyzing phone records, reviewing surveillance footage around town, trying to construct a timeline of Bennett's movements. Every lead pointed to the same horrifying conclusion. Bennett had developed a detailed method for stalking children. Lisa wasn't the first target, and she wasn't his first attempt, but until her body was found, he remained legally untouchable, the drawing that terrified everyone on the second night of Bennett's detention. A forensic analyst found something else. A drawing tucked behind the drywall in the basement room. It showed a girl standing in front of a crooked tree with a rope-like shape around her arm. The cave opening in the background. The date under the drawing, October 14th, the day Lisa disappeared. Next to the picture were 3 words: "She followed me." But Lisa was known to be cautious, even wary. She wouldn't follow a stranger, unless the stranger was a child like her, unless the stranger seemed harmless, unless the stranger was someone invisible, someone like Bennett. Part 3. The forest reveals its first secret. Pine Ridge Forest was vast, far larger than most residents realized. It was simply the backdrop of their quiet town, peaceful, harmless, filled with childhood memories. But to investigators, the forest had become something else entirely. A labyrinth, a predator's hunting ground, and possibly a graveyard. The discovery of Bennett's hidden room had changed the direction of the search entirely. Detectives were no longer looking for a missing girl, they were looking for a pattern. A method, a path, a ritual, and Bennett's drawings, as unsettling as they were, might be the only map. The crooked tree. The sketch found behind the drywall showed a distinctive crooked tree, its trunk bent sharply, almost forming an arch. Detectives knew such a landmark could be identified. Forestry officers confirmed that Pine Ridge had several trees like this, but only one sat near caves or collapsed mine entrances. That tree was located in a remote part of the forest, nearly 2 miles from the main trail, far from any place a child would normally go. It was a place only someone who studied the woods, or stalked them, would know. A place that matched the chilling inscription in Bennett's notebook: "Hide them where the trees twist." This was the first real lead. A search party was immediately dispatched, the path less traveled. As officers hiked deeper into the woods, they noticed something unusual. The deeper they went, the quieter the forest became. Birdsong stopped, wind died, even the insects seemed absent. The deeper sections of Pine Ridge Forest were old, the kind of old that made people uneasy without knowing why. The trees were thicker, the ground uneven. Light dimmed under the canopy. After 40 minutes, they reached the crooked tree. It looked exactly like Bennett's drawing, bent at a sharp angle, bark stripped on one side, roots clawing the ground like fingers. What was more unsettling was what lay near its base, a small indentation in the soil. Something had been there, recently, something roughly the size of a child, but whatever it was had been removed. The cave entrance behind the crooked tree was a collapse in the hillside, a narrow, dark opening, reinforced decades ago with rotting wooden beams. It smelled of damp earth and something else, metallic, stale. An officer shined his flashlight inside. The beam revealed scratch marks on the stone walls, some vertical, some crosshatched. They looked too deliberate to be natural. Search dogs began barking, hard, pulling toward the entrance point. One dog even tried to force its way inside, claws scraping furiously against the rocks, but it was too tight for a dog to enter, too tight for an adult. Perfect size for a child. The first discovery. Investigators widened the opening, clearing debris. Inside, the air was cold and still. About 15 feet in, a detective's flashlight landed on a piece of fabric, bright green. Lisa's jacket. It was half buried under dirt and leaves, but unmistakable. The entire search team went silent. They found a second object, a single white sneaker, Lisa's left shoe. Both items were clean, unweathered, not torn, placed, not discarded. Almost respectfully. It was evidence, but not closure. No body. No blood, just clues arranged like parts of a puzzle. One detective whispered, "He didn't kill her here." Another responded, "He brought her here." And then everyone realized the same horrifying truth: if Bennett could bring Lisa here, how many others had he brought? The mine shaft. The cave extended further than expected, opening into a narrow, vertical drop, a collapsed mine shaft from the 1920s. No one knew it still existed. Bennett apparently did. At the edge of the shaft, officers found something etched into the stone: silence. The letters were jagged, carved with something sharp, perhaps a broken tool, a knife, or even a stone. Why would Bennett carve that word? Detectives debated the meaning, silence of the victims, silence of the woods, his own desire to keep secrets, but one interpretation chilled them most. Silence is what he wanted from the world. The rope marks near the shaft. Investigators found 2 deep grooves in the rock. They ran parallel, evenly spaced, almost symmetrical. A climbing expert confirmed, these are rope marks. Something heavy was lowered down. Everyone knew what that meant. The dogs were restless, whining at the shaft's edge, but lowering officers inside would be dangerous. The mine was unstable. They would need a specialized team. Search operations resumed the next morning. Back at the station, Bennett's reaction while search teams examined the cave. Bennett remained in custody. Detectives didn't tell him what they found, but he seemed to know anyway. When Detective Rowan entered the interrogation room, Bennett looked up, eyes bright. You found the tree? Rowan froze. Which tree, Bennett? The one that bends, Bennett replied calmly. It points the way. He smiled. A small, fleeting smile, not of joy, of triumph. Rowan said quietly, Lisa was there. Bennett nodded once. She followed me. That phrase again. Rowan leaned forward. Why did she follow you? Bennett whispered, because I knew what she needed to hear. Rowan asked, which was? Bennett didn't hesitate, that she wasn't alone. It was the most terrifying sentence Rowan had heard in his entire career, because it told him everything. Bennett didn't scare his victims. He comforted them. That's how he lured them. A mother's anguish. Police informed Lisa's family that her jacket and shoe were found. Her mother collapsed. Her father demanded to enter the forest himself. We're so close, he cried. I can feel it. She's there. But even he sensed something was wrong. Not wrong because they found clues, wrong because the clues were too perfect, too clean, too staged. Why would her jacket be neat? He asked. Why would her shoe have no dirt? Where is the struggle? Detectives had no answer, because the truth was becoming undeniable. Lisa hadn't fought, she had trusted, she had walked into the woods willingly. With Bennett, nightfall in the woods that night. The search team camping near the crooked tree reported strange occurrences. Dogs pacing restlessly, officers hearing faint tapping in the woods, flashlights flickering, feeling of being watched. One officer, a veteran of wilderness searches, said, I've never felt woods this wrong. At 2:13 a.m., one of the motion cameras captured something extraordinary. A figure, small, thin, wearing dark clothing, standing near the crooked tree. When the flashlight beams turned toward it, the figure ran. Officers pursued but lost it within minutes. When they reviewed the footage, they saw something impossible. The figure was the size of a child, but Lisa was gone. Emily and Jacob were gone. So who was that child? Or was it a child at all? The DNA surprise forensics returned results on the hair lock found in Bennett's metal box. 1 strand belonged to Lisa. 2 were unidentified, but one more result shocked everyone. On Lisa's bracelet, the same bracelet found in Bennett's secret room, was touch DNA, not from Bennett, not from Lisa, from another child. A boy, approximately 12 to 14 years old. A boy who had never been reported missing. A boy Pine Ridge didn't know. A boy who was likely alive, which meant one horrifying possibility. Bennett hadn't worked alone, either. There was another child helping him, or someone had been with Lisa before she disappeared, and no one knew who. The Holloway parents reveal the first truth under mounting pressure. The Holloways finally admitted something they had hidden, something that reframed the case entirely. 2 years earlier, the family had taken in another boy temporarily, a foster child named Ethan, who stayed with them for almost 3 months. He had been troubled, isolated, obsessed with drawing maps, and he had disappeared without warning. The Holloways assumed the agency had moved him. They never asked questions, but when detectives contacted the agency, they learned something damning. Ethan had run away. He had never returned to the system. He was listed as missing, whereabouts unknown. And the last place he had been seen, the Holloway house, living with Bennett. Part 4, The Mystery of Ethan. The revelation of a missing foster child, Ethan Hale, age 13, changed everything. Until now, investigators had believed Bennett acted alone. He was organized, methodical, prepared, but also isolated. He had no friends. No social bonds. No connections to manipulate. At least, that's what everyone thought. But now there was another child. One who lived with Bennett for 3 months before vanishing, one whose whereabouts were unknown, one whose DNA appeared on Lisa's Bracelet. This meant one thing: Lisa had been with two boys, not one. And the second boy, Ethan, might still be in the woods. Or worse, he might be helping Bennett. The Holloway family's omission detectives interviewed the Holloway parents again. This time, they were less cooperative. Mrs. Holloway kept her arms tightly folded, her gaze fixed on the floor. Mr. Holloway's voice trembled as he said, "We didn't think Ethan mattered. He wasn't ours. He was temporary." Detective Rowan snapped, "He's a missing child. He matters." Mrs. Holloway whispered, "We thought he ran away. Kids like him do that." Rowan leaned forward, "And you didn't think to report it?" Her face stiffened. "Bennett said Ethan left. That he didn't want to stay. We believed him." The detectives exchanged horrified looks. Bennett, a child, had explained away the disappearance of another child, and his parents accepted it. This was negligence, blindness. Or maybe something darker, fear, because as detectives later learned, the Holloways were afraid of their son long before Lisa went missing. Ethan's room. Ethan had lived in a small spare room downstairs. Most of his belongings were gone, assumed to be taken when he left. But forensic technicians found scratch marks under the bed frame, small, thin marks, as if someone had dragged something repeatedly. They found a rusted pocket knife wedged behind the heater, and in the closet, behind a loose wooden panel, they found something more disturbing: a map. A hand-drawn map of the Pine Ridge Forest Trail system. But this map was different from the others Bennett made. This one was detailed, intricate, labeled. It included hidden paths, animal dens, water sour Seiza, safe place. Marked with an XN in the corner, written in shaky handwriting, "Follow him. He knows the way." Detective Rowan stared at the phrase. "Who is him?" he asked quietly. The answer, though unspoken, was obvious: Bennett. The photography discovery in Bennett's hidden basement room. Crime scene technicians found a memory card taped behind a beam. When they inserted it into a laptop, the screen filled with low-resolution images, photos taken in the forest, photos of trails, fallen logs, abandoned structures, all seemingly harmless at first glance. But one photo froze the entire investigation: a picture of Ethan, not a selfie, not a posed shot. A surveillance photo, taken from a distance. Ethan was standing near the crooked tree, looking back toward the camera. And the shadows behind him, barely visible, was another figure, small, slim, likely a child, their face hidden by darkness. Two boys, together, partners. Unsettling evidence in the woods back at the crooked tree. Search teams expanded their perimeter. About 200 yards from the tree, they found a clear sign, footprints. Two different sizes, one matching. Bennett toned smaller, possibly Ethan. Both sets moved in parallel, weaving through brush, circling natural obstacles, hunting paths. This was no random walk. It was tracking, following something, or someone. The tracks eventually split, one moving toward a dried creek bed, the other toward a cluster of boulders. The team divided as well. The creek bed trailed. The team following the creek bed found a disturbing sight: a small wooden crate, half buried under leaves. Inside were a broken walkie-talkie, a pack of crackers, a small flashlight, 3 batteries, a drawing of a girl with long hair. The girl resembled Lisa. On the back of the drawing were words written in messy pencil: "Don't tell him." The handwriting was not Bennett's. It belonged to Ethan. This was the first sign that Ethan wasn't simply an accomplice. He might have been a victim, too. Or he might have been trapped in Bennett's orbit, influenced, manipulated, coerced. Either way, he feared Bennett badly. The boulder cluster. The second team reached the boulders. There they found a crudely built shelter, sticks, pine branches, and a tarp that didn't belong to the Holloways. Inside the shelter was a nest of blankets and old jackets. A place where someone small had been sleeping, someone living in the woods, someone who didn't want to be found. Near the shelter, scratched onto a flat stone, were words: "I see you." Investigators were unsure whether it was a threat, a warning, or a cry for help, but it meant someone was watching the search teams. Bennett's second interview. The breakthrough. Detective Rowan brought Bennett back into the interrogation room. He placed the photo of Ethan on the table. Bennett stared at it silently. Rowan leaned in. "Where is he?" Bennett remained still. Rowan continued, "He was with you. You know he was. We found your pictures. We found your maps. We found your rooms." Still no response. Rowan played his final card. "We know he was scared of you." It happened instantly. Bennett's face twitched, a small, involuntary movement. His eyes narrowed, His posture stiffened. It was the first time emotion broke through, not fear, not guilt, but irritation. He shouldn't have been scared, Bennett said quietly. Rowan pushed. Why not? Because I didn't hurt him. Rowan's heart pounded. So where is he now? Bennett looked up, eyes cold, and whispered, You're looking in the wrong places. Rowan slammed the table. Where is Lisa? Where is Ethan? Bennett blinked slowly. You won't find them until you understand. Understand what? Bennett leaned in, his voice almost a hiss. Why they followed me. The child psychology experts warning. Police brought in a child psychologist to analyze Bennett's cryptic statements. Her evaluation was chilling. Bennett does not see relationships. He sees roles. He places people where they fit in his world. Lisa is the follower. Ethan is the helper, and Bennett sees himself as the leader. She added, he likely manipulated Ethan into believing they were part of a game, a mission, a secret partnership. But the psychologist also said something even more terrifying. Ethan may no longer be a victim. Detective Rowan frowned. What do you mean? She replied, if Bennett convinced Ethan they were doing something important or necessary, then Ethan may be actively helping him hide Lisa. It was the worst-case scenario. A boy missing. A girl missing, and one psychopathically intelligent teen orchestrating it all. The night movement around midnight. Motion sensors placed near the crooked tree triggered again. An officer sprinted to the site. Fresh footprints, small, barefoot, running toward the mine shaft. The prints belonged to a child, likely Ethan, but why was he returning to the shaft? Searching, checking, watching. The deeper the detectives waded into the case, the more they realized Ethan might be both prey and predator now. A chilling piece of evidence. The whisper log technicians recovered audio from Bennett's hidden walkie-talkie set. Most of it was static, but two messages were clear, a whisper, a child's voice, are you there? Static, then another child's whisper, unmistakably Bennett's, stay hidden. And finally one more, shakier voice, Ethan, I don't want to do it anymore. Followed by Bennett, you already did. Detectives replayed that exchange dozens of times. The implications were horrifying. If Ethan wanted out, what did Bennett force him into? The final clue of Part 4 that morning, as daylight broke over Pine Ridge, officers searching the forest found something lodged in a tree hollow near the mine shaft, a folded piece of paper, weathered, damp, but still readable. On it was a simple message. One is gone. One is hiding. One is watching. And beneath it, 3 crude drawings, a girl with long hair. A boy with a hood, and a third figure, with no face. Detective Rowan stared at the faceless figure for a long time. Who is that? He whispered. No one answered, but everyone knew the real nightmare was only beginning.